This is literally why legal operations exists, because they can't get to that work because there's all this other run the company work that is manual and repetitive in nature that they also need to do.
So, welcome to the You Are Lawyer podcast. Akshay Verma, how are you today?
I'm good. It's a good energy week.
And you're in California?
Yeah, I'm in a little town called San Carlos, California, in the Bay Area.
Okay, cool. I am in Ohio.
Where in Ohio? I spent the first 2 years in this country in Cleveland.
Okay, I'm in Columbus, so 2 hours south.
Got it. Cool.
Yep. So I am really excited to have you on the show. We were joking about the fact that you haven't moved out of that chair in 4 hours because you're busy, but you know, your resume includes Meta, it includes Coinbase, and now you are working with SpotDraft. But before we get to that, you are a lawyer.
Yeah.
That's why you're on the show.
Yeah.
Why did you become a lawyer? Where did that motivation come from?
So I went to elementary, middle school, and a little bit of high school here in the Bay Area. And in 8th grade, we used to do a week-long science trip. And for my school, it was in Yosemite National Park. And this is a long time ago, if the beard and the gray is any indication. This would have been in 1989. And so we're in Yosemite. And for 2 nights, they did like this educational module on environmental issues. And back then, the hotbed environmental issues of the day were deforestation, the ozone layer, and waste and recycling. And so I learned about those 3 things really kind of for the first time. And I remember I remember exactly where I was sitting in the amphitheater when we watched the first video. And I was like, oh my God, if we don't do something about this, this planet's done. And so that started this real interest in learning more about environmental issues, which eventually in college turned into an environmental science policy and management minor. And I took my first environmental law course as a junior in college. And I was like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to become an environmental lawyer. So I went and did that. And I did it for 6 years and I didn't really enjoy it. And so I decided to not do it anymore.
Yeah. That is really fascinating to me. I went to law school intending to be an environmental lawyer. I grew up a tree hugger. My daughter and I still play outside. When it rains, we sit on the porch and watch the rain.
I love it.
I was going to work for the Army Corps of Engineers. And then I got into law school. I took a construction law course. Okay. And I was like, oh, I can like restrict their permits from this side, right? To still protect the environment. Well, I went to law school in Louisiana, and then people started trying to make me become a lobbyist for the other side. And I was like, this is going to be harder than I thought. I was like, okay, yeah. I think I'll just go to big law. And then I ended up doing IP law.
Yeah. Okay, so interestingly enough, after college, I worked as a paralegal for 3 years before going to law school. I was an IP litigation paralegal. And so I was like, yeah, maybe I can do that. But there's a lot that you can do with the environment that has nothing to do with the law. And I think for me, it was much more the environment I practiced in than the actual environmental law part, because I think it's fascinating. Like, I think issues with the environment are so multidisciplinary. You have science, you have policy, you have politics, you have psychology, sociology, like all of those things come together for these very like complex problems. And the law is one aspect of that, but there's lots of others you can tap into without it.
Absolutely. Look at us doing PR for environmental law. Wasn't even expecting it.
I mean, I know we're not going to talk politics, but does it even matter right now with this administration? Who knows?
I know. But what happened when you were like, okay, this was fun. I gave it 6 years. What else is out there? What was that transition like?
It was scary. I didn't really know what was out there. I came out of law school in 2006. When you came out of law school in 2006, you went to a law firm, small, medium, large. Like, that was really it. And so I didn't know a lot. And there really wasn't a lot yet. And fast forward to 2012, and the real trigger here was, my wife was like, we're going to be parents for the first time. And I was like, I got to get the F out of the law firm life. I just got to get out. And so I looked in a lot of different areas. I looked at going in-house. And, because of my environmental background, and solar was really kind of booming back then. And so I looked at a lot of like early stage solar companies, but like they were looking for more experience than I had as a 6-year associate, as a senior associate. And I looked at government jobs. I looked at county council roles, the city attorney, like a lot of different areas where I could do something more interesting. and nothing really panned out or was like all that. Well, I'd probably just be in the same situation again. And then one of the partners at my firm who knew I was looking, he was like, hey, this company Axiom had reached out to me a couple of years ago. They've got a very different model of practicing law. He's like, you should check them out. And so I gave them a call, and then I spent the next couple of weeks learning about them and what they were doing in the legal industry and why they were doing it and how they were doing it. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. And so I started talking to them about practicing law in their model. And so you go from engagement to engagement. You work with different companies, you get a lot of in-house experience, you get to stay fresh, you're not tied to one role. So for me, it was an opportunity to kind of get my feet wet in the in-house world where I had no experience and see what it would be like. 2 months into that, I met a guy who eventually became my manager at Axiom, who had a very similar path. He had been a lawyer at a big law, then went in-house, but he'd been doing business development and consulting for them. And he was like, you should really come try this. I think you'd be really good at it. And so that's what kind of transitioned me into the Axiom world.
Yeah. Okay. What I'm really enjoying about your story is that jumping from big law to in-house, it can be difficult, but you had the social capital and the career capital that a partner was like, no, he can do it. I promise you. Yeah. Right? Especially being in your 6th year, because you're so established that they're like, you already have so many habits already set. I don't know.
You're so right. As I switched to start at Axiom interviewing for the business role, I got a lot of that, like, hey, lawyers like you have not done well in this role for very specific reasons. How do we know you're not like that? So I had to really overcome that, right? Deep down for me, I was like, this is like perfect for me. The aspects of being a lawyer in big law that I loved were being a part of all the different, communities, like all the bar associations and so forth. I actually was drumming up business as a 3rd-year lawyer because I was out there and I had a network and I leveraged it and I knew how to leverage it, which most lawyers they don't pound the pavement for business. They don't do that. And so I knew that, but I had to overcome that for them. And that was in just like almost in any job earlier in your career, you need someone to take a chance on you. And he took a chance on me. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I assume your wife was in agreement that, yeah, let's move this along.
Let me tell you something about that. So as this was happening, my wife is now 6 months pregnant, and she had decided to stop working the year before. So we're on my income, which was great. It was as a 6th-year associate, even back then, good money, really good money. But if leaving the law firm meant taking almost a 50% pay cut. And we had just bought a house like 3 years before that. And she was like, wait a minute. Like, what? Like, are you serious about this? And so I also asked her to take a chance on me. And I was like, this really feels like the start of something new. I was like, how unhappy I've been, particularly for the last year. And this is a chance for me to do something different. I was like, I promise you this will pay off. And it has. You look at 13 years later, like, it's been an amazing journey so far.
I love that. I feel like lawyers should take more risk because we are literally trained in how to mitigate the risk. So that should make us lean into it, but at the same time, we're creatures of habit, and we're like, yeah, but that one works, so I'm gonna just keep it like that, right?
Yeah, it's like what was that movie? It was with Ben Stiller and Jennifer Aniston, where he's an insurance guy. I forget what it was called. Along Came Polly, maybe that was it. And all he sees everywhere is risk, like even like the peanuts and do you know how much bacteria is on the right? That's kind of what I think. That's how lawyers tend to be, because not only do they, and somebody on a panel yesterday used this term, and I really like it. It wasn't risk aversion; it was risk awareness. Okay. And then there's an individual capacity and decision that makes you risk averse as a result of that. Can you retune that to lean into the risk? And maybe I wasn't like that in the first place. Maybe inherently, I don't think I really ever gave a shit about risk, to be honest. But if you lean into that, boy, does an entire new world open up to you.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe it's not so much the risk for yourself, but you're married now, you're having children.
Sure.
The layers on top that make it a little bit more complicated.
Absolutely right. Absolutely
right. Okay. Yeah. So we're still missing some gaps in the story. Axiom to where? Meta first, or did you start out at smaller companies and then you build up, or what?
No. So I spent almost 7 years at Axiom. At my time there, I learned a lot about what it takes to run legal departments because so we sold into legal departments. And so that gave me an opportunity to talk to GCs, their deputies. And in the first, from 2012 till about 2015 or 16, it was almost exclusively working with lawyers. But there was this big shift that had started to take place where after that time frame, most of my main client contacts were actually heads of legal ops because I worked with very large companies for the most part, the Googles, the Facebooks, the Ubers of the world. And so they were building these legal operations teams and they were hiring heads of legal ops and they managed the operational aspect of the legal department. They were often gatekeepers and things like that, but they were also the people that I could talk to who spoke the language of the business to understand how we should deploy a particular solution with that within that department. And so that got me into like, what do they care about and what keeps them up at night and how do we solve their problems? And so Facebook, they were one of my clients through Axiom and they came calling in the summer of 2018. And again, it was one of those, like been at Axiom for almost 7 years, doing really well, had a great book of business, really enjoying my work, enjoyed the people, what the company was doing. But it's like one of those situations where like, wait a minute, like this could be something new and interesting and fun because they were just starting to kind of build out their legal ops team. And they were like, we want you to come and do what you're doing here from the inside. And so that took me to Facebook in 2018. And then I spent almost 4 years there.
I'm laughing. And if you guys are watching on YouTube, Axiom, I'm sure, is a great company, but that's Facebook. Like, I'm like,
yeah. Well, so interestingly enough, my wife was at Facebook very early on. So that company had been a part of our lives for a long time. She started there in 2006, I think. And so we knew, I knew a lot of people there already just because of her time. In fact, her last manager before she left is actually still there at the company now. And he was there when I was interviewing. So a lot of familiarity just from a people perspective, a lot of familiarity with the business.
Okay. So name aside, right? Facebook is a company. Of course, they're public, so the scale is a lot different, but they do need operations. They have HR, they have finance, they have all of it. How did you go from business development to legal operations?
Yeah.
I mean, was it really that smooth where they were like, well, you're already talking to the leads? Yeah.
There were aspects of it that were very seamless. The concepts, the plan of what we needed to do. And I came in initially to really address their outside counsel spend. The plan of what we needed to do, the mechanism of how we needed to do it. Like those kinds of things were fairly seamless. What was very different, and I'm a confident person at heart. I'm pretty open, I'm pretty direct, I'm pretty transparent with how I go about doing things. But the hardest part in a huge place like that with incredibly bright, incredibly ambitious, incredibly driven, success and result oriented people was getting them to do something differently where I know it's in their benefit, but how do you get them to realize that it's in their own benefit to do something differently when and all of them are lawyers, see nothing but risk in doing something differently? That was hard. That was really hard. And that's the hardest part of legal operations. I don't care where you are. It's the hardest part of legal operations. But, I was fortunate. I had some very important relationships and very senior roles because they had created this role. And so I got support. But they also, they weren't going to be like, we're going to tell our teams to listen to you. That doesn't get me what I need. That doesn't get the department what it needs. So I had to build a lot of credibility. I had to build a trust. I had to let them take their time, but also push forward because I had my own timelines that were imposed upon me. So that I would say was the hardest part of being in a large place like that. And at the time, the department was roughly 800 people.
Oh.
Oh, but when I left, it was 2,000, just so you know.
Oh, yeah. You said large department. I was like, yeah. 85 people.
Gigantic. I don't know. We need a new word for that size.
Okay, well, because I'm listening and I'm like, yeah, I get it. It's hard to turn a large ship. 800 people. That's the Titanic. That's huge. Okay, so the soft skills that were needed to do that are fascinating, right? And I'm assuming that you garnered those at the environmental law office at Axiom, right? Just being a spouse, being a partner, all of those types of things, and you bring them to the office. Okay. I work in operations as well. I did that at a law firm. They called me the enforcement coordinator.
Love it.
But when I was in law school, when I ran for parliamentarian, I ran as the enforcer for like the Student Bar Association, because I'm like,
Nice.
you get an idea, I'm with it. Like I'm running. I'm the enforcer. And so once I realized that it was operations, I then went to like corporate retail and some other things. So you also worked at Coinbase and a couple of other places, but right now, and the main feature of this entire episode is that you're working with SpotDraft as the COO, Chief Operating Officer. What is it like being at a startup? I saw that you guys just got a Series B round, so this is very different.
It is the smallest company I've ever worked at, and it is the largest, most intense job I've ever had. That's such a juxtaposition of two things, right? Like, because people always say, well, how could it be more intense than this? I was like, I work from halfway around the world. 95% of our company is in Bangalore. As the COO, I work from halfway around the world. I work with people who are 12 and a half to 13 and a half hours ahead of me. And so that is a very big challenge. I don't think I appreciated that challenge enough, even though the CEO and I, as we were talking about the role, talked about it a lot. And I don't think until you're in it, I don't think you feel the weight of that. I don't think you feel how difficult that is to get things done, to communicate, to share information. All of those things matter so much more. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is, I've done bits and pieces of what I do now in my various roles at Axiom, Facebook. I still can't call it Meta, by the way. But now every decision that I sign off on or make has a monumental impact for the company, not just for a group of people or the legal department, but for the entire company and for the future of that's a weight that I don't think I have felt before. I think those are the main things that have really been different for me. And it took, I don't know that I'm used to it. Maybe I'm used to it now. I feel more used to it, but it took a really long time to kind of get into the groove of that.
Yeah. So what is it about the weight of your decisions? Is it truly the ripple effect of it? Or is it just like, wow, what a privilege that my one decision impacts so many others?
No, it's really it matters so much more, because there's an entire company that gets impacted by it. And so that is probably a pressure I haven't really felt before. Am I making the right decision? Are we doing the right thing? And I've not historically been somebody who shies away from that. I was the kid who wanted the ball in his hands when it's time to make that. Like that's my mentality. That's all good and all, but now my judgment, my experience, the actual decision that I make and what happens as a result of that matters a lot more. And so that's been a new feeling for me to kind of grapple with.
Yeah. It's cool though.
It is. It's not all hunky dory all the time.
I'm sure. So you said that SpotDraft is the smallest company you've been at. How small is small?
Almost 300 people.
Okay.
Yeah. It's almost 300 people. And like I said, all but about a dozen are in Bangalore, in India. All of our operations, our engineering, our product, much of our sales, customer success, our delivery team, which I oversee, like all of that is in India. Now we have 2 execs here in the United States. We have a handful of account executives, a community team, which I also oversee, but a much smaller part of the overall company than is in Bangalore. So that's definitely been. But I was born in India, and one of the most amazing kind of parts of this new job, I fly back to India a couple times a year to have meetings at the company, is I get to see my family in Delhi. And that's been a really nice kind of aspect of this, because it's not something that you would just kind of go to India every year necessarily, right? So that's been a really nice part of it too.
Yeah, I love that. That's really cool. Okay, 300 people, that's relatively small.
Yeah.
So I am a big fan of AI. I love where we are in technology. I'm excited for where things will be in the future. But I mean, I'm a podcaster recording with you on a Wednesday. I am a risk taker. I'm an innovator. I'm all about it. Is SpotDraft working with small business owners, like small law firms, or are you trying to go after the big law offices and kind of like innovate and upgrade their entire departments?
Yeah. So our main buyers, the market that we not only want to sell into, but we're very successful in selling into, is what we call the mid-market space. So our buyers tend to be legal departments, law departments, so companies. And our company profile is, companies who have at least one lawyer. That typically is around 50 to maybe 100 employees, all the way up to 5, 6, 7,000 employees. And so we sell into those legal departments. We've been doing that pretty much since inception, and we've been around for 7 years now. And interestingly enough, your comment on AI is very relevant. I mean, you literally can't have a conversation in 2025 without using the term AI. It just happens everywhere. But we actually started off as an AI only tool. And that was kind of the original thought that our co-founders had. And they quickly pivoted to a full end-to-end contract lifecycle management tool, which is what we are now. But AI has kind of been native to the DNA of how we think about doing things, right? Legal technology is literally the act of enabling a manual task to drive more efficiency, which is the crux of what legal operations does. That's why it was such a draw to me from a personal level as well.
Yeah. So elephant in the room, though, most lawyers aren't running towards AI, or at least excited about it, right? No, oh my gosh, you're going to close down our whole department. Yeah. And I feel like you and I are like, no, we're going to make your department more efficient so that those bodies can do other things.
Yes.
Where 100%. Do you stand? Okay.
100% in the latter. I just did an AI panel yesterday, and we talked about this very thing. AI is a tool. It's a piece of technology. Are we saying that we have not had this issue or this conversation with other pieces of technology? Of course we have, in the legal profession. I'm old enough to remember when email was just like starting to become a thing. I was in college. Wait, I can write something on the computer and it goes to my professor? I was like, this is really cool. And back when this was happening, I learned this obviously later on. I didn't know it at the time because I wasn't in the legal profession. But Richard Susskind, who is a legend in the legal profession, he's like the Nostradamus of the legal profession. And back then, he made a prediction, and he's made several bold predictions. Like, I'm serious, like almost all of them come to be true. He said, within 5 years, lawyers will be using email as their main method of communication rather than written mail. And the legal industry laughed at him and said, you're crazy. And what were they doing 5 years later? Now, could you even think about life, forget about as a lawyer, but as a human being, without email? Could you even think about writing a letter, putting it in an envelope, putting a stamp on it, taking it to the post office or maybe to the mailbox out front, putting it in and be like, oh, I think it'll get there tomorrow. Maybe it'll be a couple of days. Could you? No, I don't do that. Nobody does that. Well, maybe some people do.
I still do that, but I'm old school.
Yeah, but no, but like we don't do that really. So I think we will look back at AI in a very similar fashion. I don't know when that's going to be, so I'm not going to put a prediction on it, but I think it'll be pretty quick. I'm already starting to take some things for granted with AI. It's crazy.
Oh, yeah. It'll be way faster than people are expecting. And I'm just so grateful that, like, I'm on this side.
Yeah.
Right? Because even with podcasting, I started this show 5 years ago. And everyone was like, no, podcastings are saturated. And that was 5 years ago. And it's not even saturated now. And I'm like, TV's been around for 100 years. So, like, what are you talking about? So, yeah. I mean, it's going to get better. And then, like, I have a 4-year-old. And I can't even imagine, like, my husband, he's like, we don't need to teach her how to, like, get a Barbie car or anything. She's not going to need to know how to drive.
We evolve. That's what we do. We evolve and we progress. There are benefits. There are downsides. We have to navigate all of them equally. Like, we can't ignore that stuff. But this is inevitable. It's not a question of if anymore. It's already way past that. I get the fear. I understand the fear because, and this is my perspective on where this fear stems from. So much of the work that in-house lawyers and legal professionals do is manual in nature. And manual work is ripe for automation. Now, if we as individuals, as lawyers, as legal professions, hold our identity to that manual work, I think we're doing ourselves a disservice. Because you said something which is so true. What is the automation of this? What does it allow us to now do? There are things that we need to be doing that we're not doing. There's so much core strategic work that lawyers want to be doing. This is literally why legal operations exists, because they can't get to that work because there's all this other run the company work that is manual and repetitive in nature that they also need to do. So they can't live in that world that they really went to law school for. That's the stuff that they love doing. The advising, the judgment, the interaction with their customers and clients. That's what they want to be doing. But there's so much manual work that still needs to get done. It holds us back. This unlocks a lot of that. Now, there is a reality. We have deployed humans to do a lot of that manual work. So they're probably going to feel this fear more than anyone else. But the reality of what we need to do with those people is upskill them. How do we move them up the value chain of the work that needs to get done? And contracting is literally at the center of so much of that, because so much of what happens in contracting, and this is why SpotDraft exists, so much of what happens in contracting is manual in nature. Our CEO was cutting and pasting clauses in a contract in Word, and he was like, this is freaking ridiculous. Elon's building flying cars or autonomous vehicles, and like I'm cutting and pasting in a Word document. Why are we doing this, right? And so that's the birthplace of innovation. It's pain.
Yeah. It's funny though, because from the operations side, when I left my office, I was managing about 6 paralegals in a group, but we were supporting lawyers in 5 of our offices. So we were already had automated a lot. We had created like an internal dashboard, and it was pretty terrible to look at it now, but at the time it was a big deal.
Absolutely.
So the operations people, we're excited for where technology is going, because we're like, do you know how much doc review this will eliminate? Are you
yes. Crazy? Oh, as someone who sat in rooms full of boxes to do doc review as a paralegal, I so feel that one. Yeah.
And the thing is, it's almost like that was our hazing process. And so now the older lawyers are like, but what else are you going to do if you don't do that? It's like, be a lawyer.
It's interesting. There really are 2 camps. There are people who are really looking forward to this, and there are people who are like, oh my God, get this away from me. There's really no in between.
I know. I never would have described myself as an early adopter, but look at me. This podcast is mostly listened to by young lawyers, 5 years practicing or less, or law students.
Got it.
What would you say to them about what they can do with their law degrees?
Oh man, the world is literally your oyster right now. I had the privilege of addressing the incoming 2019 class at my alma mater, which is Santa Clara Law University. 6 years ago, I said, there is such a diversity of opportunity available to you in the legal profession. There are titles in jobs that don't even exist yet. I'd said that in 2019. Now they're like everywhere. Legal engineer, like solutions legal engineer, things like that just, you couldn't even fathom that would have existed back then. And so it's opened up this incredible set of doors for law graduates. You don't have to just go to a law firm anymore. With the proliferation of legal operations, with the proliferation of legal technology, and the importance of process optimization and all of the things that are on the business side of the law, right? So not the practice of the law, but the business of the law. There's so much more that's out there now. You can really find something that speaks to you as a human, as a lawyer, as a person, that's going to be so fun. You're not going to be tied into the thing that I was tied into, which is I got some law school loans. I got to get a big law job. I'm going to go do it. And I did what I did, and I learned a lot, and I don't have any regrets around it. But if I had what they have available to them now, if I had that in 2006, I might have made a very different decision. I don't know. But the reality is now you have that choice, and choice is fantastic for everybody. I really look at this as a really important moment for law students. And this is why I teach at Santa Clara. I share this with my students as well. The administration's really getting on board. Like there's a lot that's going to change in academia as well. We have to start teaching lawyers how to AI prompt. We have to start teaching that, and that starts in law school. So I think those kinds of things will start to take place at a much greater clip. But the reality of what's available to law grads now is significantly more than when I was coming out of law school.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think your career is a good example of that as well, right? Because in 2006, when you got out, if you would have ever told someone, yeah, I'm the chief operating officer at a startup,
cool.
Why would you do that? And then you're like, oh, but I started doing this. They would be like, what?
Yeah.
So even your own career has kind of shown there'll be ebbs and flows, and you just kind of got to go with it. But like, look at the opportunities and choose.
And you got to take a little bit of risk. You can bet on yourself. What's the worst that can happen? You don't enjoy it after 6 months and you find something new. Like literally that's the worst that can happen.
I know.
Yeah.
Wow. That's so good. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Great. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.